A baby monitor should be a symbol of peace of mind for new parents. The tiny device is designed to transmit sound or images from a baby's crib to the living room or the parent's bedroom, ensuring their little one is safe throughout the night. However, on a cold evening in May 2007, May 7th to be exact, in the small town of Kuřim, Czech Republic, this simple technology became a gateway to a nightmare, a window revealing the darkest side of humanity. Edward Turdi, a young father just experiencing the joys of parenthood, was sitting in his living room. He was trying to adjust his monitor's frequency to ensure his baby's deep sleep remained undisturbed. Suddenly, his expression changed as if he had seen something he was never meant to see. The monitor's screen had picked up a video transmission from a neighbor's house, a frequency interference that sometimes occurs with wireless devices. At first, he thought he was watching one of the neighbor's children playing in a dimly lit room, but within seconds, his suspicion turned to shock, then to blood-curdling fear. The image filling the small screen was not a peaceful baby, nor a child at play, but a scene he would never be able to forget. What was captured was a small boy, knocked, filthy, and bound helplessly on the concrete floor of a dark, damp room. His body was covered in bluish bruises, scratches, and drying open wounds. The dim light from the camera highlighted his deathly pale face, his eyes swollen from ceaseless crying, and the tears that had carved dirty tracks down his cheeks. He was sobbing, a desperate, soundless cry, a soul scream calling out to anyone who might save him. The despair radiating from every inch of his small body made the image far more horrifying than just physical wounds. This was the tangible manifestation of a shattered childhood, the scream of a soul utterly crushed. Edward Trdi didn't waste a second. Trembling, he immediately contacted the police. Moments later, the Maurova family home was raided. Officers entered the house, which felt instantly chilling, and descended into the damp, mold-scented basement where all sense of safety and humanity had died. There, they found 8-year-old Andrei locked in a small, stuffy, and dark closet, barely breathing. His older brother, 10-year-old Jakub, was found later at another location, also in a horrific state. Both boys were extremely weak, trembling uncontrollably, and the visible marks on their bodies revealed the signs of prolonged and severe mistreatment. Every movement they made was slow and cautious, as if they feared the very air they breathed could trigger further punishment. Their eyes were empty, hollow. There was no glint of childhood, only the shadow of a deep trauma etched into their souls. Their mother, Klara Mauerova, and their aunt, Katerina Mauerova, were arrested on the spot. However, during the initial investigation, the police discovered another unexpected figure, a thin girl with pale skin, long tangled blonde hair, and eyes full of fear. She introduced herself as Anička, claiming to be a Norwegian orphan who had been illegally adopted by Klara. Initially, everyone, including the police and the public who began following the case, believed Anička was an additional victim who had also suffered in the dark drama of the Mauerova family. Her heartbreaking story, a foreign girl lost in a strange land, earned her immense sympathy. On May 13, 2007, Anička was placed in Klokanek, a child protection facility in Brno, to ensure her safety from further violence and to begin the recovery process. However, Barbora Škrlová, the real name behind the Anička persona, had other plans. With her masterful manipulation skills, she convinced the entire staff and psychologists at Klokanek that she was a traumatized 13-year-old girl, even exhibiting convincingly childlike behavior and emotions. In the silence of the night, a few weeks later, on May 23, 2007, she managed to escape the facility without a trace. Anička's disappearance triggered a massive international search, under the assumption that she was a missing and highly vulnerable victim. The media reported her disappearance with a sense of urgency, combining the story of two tortured boys with that of a little girl who had vanished, possibly abducted. Months passed in uncertainty. Then, in December 2007, shocking news came from Norway. Police there had received a report about a 13-year-old boy named Adam who was found living with a local family. His unique physical characteristics raised suspicion when compared with the internationally distributed photos of Anichka. A DNA test, urgently conducted in January 2008, confirmed a truth that sent shivers down the world's spine. Adam was Anichka, and Anichka was actually Barbora Škrlová, a 33-year-old woman at the time. Barbora's double disguise as Anichka and then as Adam was completely exposed. She was extradited back to the Czech Republic to face justice. Barbora Škrlová was born in Brno in 1973. Early on, she was diagnosed with hypopituitarism, a rare hormonal disorder that significantly stunted her physical growth. This condition left her with a petite body, a youthful face, and a voice that sounded like a teenager's. Her appearance, which some found endearing and childlike, concealed a potential for danger few could imagine. Barbora had an extreme form of histrionic personality disorder, HPD, characterized by a compulsive and insatiable need to be the center of attention. She was highly manipulative, a masterful actor in playing with others' emotions, and capable of intensely dramatic and theatrical behavior. Her extraordinary ability to act as a child, even to the point of influencing her physiological functions, such as lowering her heart rate, was a key manifestation of this disorder, showcasing her capacity to fully adopt different personas. In addition to HPD, there were strong suggestions she exhibited signs of dissociative identity disorder, which would allow for a severe fragmentation of identity, enabling her to truly become the character she played. A deeper investigation revealed that this horrifying drama was rooted in the influence of an extremist sect called the Grail movement. In the early 2000s, Kateřina Mauerová, Klara's sister, had become fully indoctrinated by the sect's teachings. The group was led by Josef Škrla, who was, ironically, the biological father of Barbora Škrlová. Their doctrine centered on the purification of the soul through suffering and absolute obedience, a teaching that had been distorted into a justification for cruelty. Kateřina, whose psychological profile showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, an exaggerated sense of superiority, a relentless need for admiration and control, and an extreme lack of empathy, viewed her sister and nephews as objects to be controlled and exploited for her own ideological validation. She became the primary mastermind, systematically isolating Klara from outside influences and positioning herself as the sole source of truth and spiritual guidance. Around 2005 to 2006, under the careful direction and planning of Josef Škrla and Kateřina, Barbora was prepared to infiltrate Klara's family. Klara, who was going through a difficult time after a divorce and exhibited traits of dependent personality disorder, DPD, a deep need to be cared for, and an extreme fear of separation or rejection, was the perfect target for manipulation. Her vulnerability made her easily influenced and controlled by a strong authority figure, especially her sister. In late 2006, Barbora Škrlová was introduced to Klara under the false identity of Anička Järvinen, an approximately 13-year-old orphan from Norway who had supposedly run away from a rehabilitation center. Klara, easily swayed and seeking spiritual guidance, welcomed Anička into her home without a hint of suspicion. She saw Anička as an orphan in need of love, a new part of her small family. but the reality inside that house was an unimaginable hell. In early 2007, the systematic torture of Andrei and Jakub began with vicious cruelty. Katarzyna orchestrated these vile acts while Clara, trapped in a folie à deux, a shared psychosis instilled by Katarzyna, actively carried them out. Clara was convinced that torturing her own children was the only way to save their souls and follow the sect's holy teachings. The intense internal conflict between her maternal instincts and the powerful indoctrination of the cult turned her into a psychologically broken individual, one who believed cruelty was kindness. Joseph Škrla himself, as the sect's leader and chief ideological architect, displayed classic psychopathic traits: superficial charm, a sense of superiority, and a complete lack of remorse or guilt. He created and propagated a deviant belief system that gave him unlimited power over his followers, demanding unconditional obedience, even in the commission of the most inhuman acts. By placing his daughter, Barbora, as a key agent on the ground, he created a multi-layered system of control. Barbora, in her Anichka persona, was the sect's most effective psychological weapon. Her ability to convincingly play a child made her a false witness whose moral legitimacy was unquestionable in the eyes of the perpetrators. Her presence seemed to justify the insane discipline, placing the boys in a test of purity for the sake of the sect's teachings. Andrei and Jakub were forced to stand naked in a cold room for hours, sometimes outside in the snow. If they cried, a leather belt or a wooden stick was the answer. If they vomited, they were forced to eat their own vomit. One of the most horrific incidents was when Andrei was forced to beat his own mother, a ritual called the obedience test, designed to break the children's will. When the case went to trial in Brno in March 2008, the Czech public was consumed with rage and fixated on every detail. Photos of the victims and perpetrators were widely circulated. TV stations broadcast every development, and the nation grieved for the atrocities that had occurred behind closed doors. In October 2008, the verdicts were finally delivered. Katarzyna Mauerova was sentenced to 10 years in prison as the mastermind. Klara Mauerova, the mother, received 9 years as the direct executor, and Barbora Škrlová was sentenced to 5 years for her central role in identity fraud and manipulation. Other members of the sect also received prison sentences ranging from 5 to 8 years. Andrei and Jakub were eventually returned to their father, who had fought tirelessly for their custody. Although the trauma will remain with them for life, and their healing process will be incredibly long and complex, both boys have shown extraordinary human resilience, fighting to survive and live relatively normal lives after everything they endured. In February 2011, Barbora Škrlová was granted parole after serving only 2.5 years of her sentence. She began living with a new identity under strict social supervision, a shadow of her monstrous past. The Czech Republic had never experienced a case like this before, and the Kuřim case triggered massive reforms in the country's child protection system, yet a collective wound remains wide open in the nation's memory. The world came to know her in another way. The film Orphan, 2009, and its prequel Orphan First Kill, 2022, are widely believed to be inspired by Barbora Škrlová's story, although the filmmakers have never officially confirmed it. The resemblance is astonishing. An adult woman with a childlike appearance, who masquerades as a child to infiltrate a family, then skillfully manipulates everyone around her to the point of destruction. The Kuřim case stands as a terrifying and tragic reminder. Monsters do not always have snarling faces or imposing figures. Sometimes they come in small bodies, with innocent faces and gentle voices, yet they bring unimaginable destruction and evil, exploiting weakness and trust to create hell on earth.